In a forgotten corner of Chicago, under the endless hum of train tracks and cold concrete skies, lived a man named Ethan. A man who once had a name, a family, maybe even dreams. But now, he was just a shape slumped against the rusted bench near the train station, a paper cup in his hands and silence in his soul. Day after day, watching the world walk by without seeing him, speaking only to ask, "Spare some change?" But never being heard beyond that moment. He wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. He had simply surrendered. Until one chilly autumn morning, as the fog lifted and business suits swarmed the platform, his tired eyes caught sight of a man who seemed different. Sharp suit, polished shoes, phone in one hand, leather briefcase in the other. He looked like he belonged to another world entirely. And something in Ethan stirred, the way a dry leaf stirs in a sudden breeze. He reached out and said softly, "Sir, if you can." But before he could finish, the man, Marcus, turned and met his eyes, not with pity, but with piercing clarity, and asked, "You ask for help from everyone. But have you ever given anything to anyone?" Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond, and said truthfully, "I have nothing, sir. I'm just a beggar." Marcus nodded slowly. "If you have nothing to give, maybe you should stop asking to." And with that, he boarded his train and disappeared into the blur. Ethan sat there, stunned, confused, and unexpectedly shaken by words that weren't cruel, but cut deep, because they were true. And for the first time in years, he didn't beg that day. Instead, he just sat, thinking about his worth, his existence, about the line between asking and earning, between surviving and living. For 2 days he barely moved, as the world spun around him, and people tossed coins without looking. Then, on the third morning, while watching the sun rise between two broken walls, he noticed a patch of wildflowers, simple, unclaimed, blooming quietly near the chain-link fence. And suddenly, an idea hit him like warmth. After a long winter, he thought, maybe I do have something to give. He gently picked a few, tied them with a shoelace, and that day, when someone dropped a coin, he smiled, handed them a flower, and said, "Thank you, from me to you." At first, people looked surprised, but they smiled, and the smallest human connection was made. That smile became Ethan's oxygen, his reason to rise the next day and pick more flowers, arrange them better, tie them neater, and greet people with sincerity and color. And slowly, something beautiful happened. More people stopped. More people gave, not out of sympathy, but appreciation. He wasn't just a man with a cup anymore. He was a man offering something real. Ethan's corner became known as the flower stop, and people began sharing his story, taking photos, even giving him extra to bring more flowers the next day. Within weeks, Ethan saved enough to buy actual bouquets from a nearby wholesale seller. And he turned his patch of concrete into a blooming business. And then, one crisp winter morning, as snowflakes danced in the early light, Marcus returned, the same businessman, walking the same path, and Ethan, now wearing a clean coat someone had gifted, his hands full of wrapped bouquets, ran up and said, smiling with tear-filled eyes, "Today I have something to offer you." Marcus looked surprised but smiled, handing him money and accepting the flowers, saying, "You've changed." Ethan nodded. "Your words changed me, sir. That day, you didn't insult me. You challenged me to see myself differently. I stopped being just a beggar the day I started giving." Marcus looked at him with something more than respect. He saw an equal. 6 months passed, and at another train station in another city, Two sharply dressed men stood side by side. One extended his hand and said, "Remember me." The other looked puzzled. "I don't think we've met." The first man smiled. "You have, twice. The first time, I was the beggar you walked away from. The second time, I gave you flowers." The second man, Marcus, stared in disbelief. Ethan laughed gently. "Now, I own a flower business. I travel between cities. I have clients. I have purpose. All because you showed me I was never a beggar. I just didn't know I was a businessman in the making." Marcus smiled. "Looks like we're both in the same business now." And they both laughed, because they knew something few others did. That success doesn't come from what you own, but from what you choose to believe. And so, Ethan's story reminds us that the way we see ourselves becomes the way the world sees us. When we see limits, we live within them. But when we see value, we invite others to believe in it too. Transformation doesn't begin with a handout. It begins with a mindset shift, a moment of courage, a single decision to give instead of just take, to offer instead of wait. And if you too are feeling stuck, small, or invisible, ask yourself not what the world owes you, but what beauty still lives inside you that the world hasn't yet seen. That's where your story begins. If this story touched you, please like the video. Share it with someone who needs to believe in their worth again. And subscribe for more soul-stirring stories that remind us we're never as far behind as we think. We're just one mindset shift away from a brand new beginning.